All right, everyone, we are back for our second session here, third session of the day here for our morning. We're going to wrap our morning up with a session that's come up a lot. We've been doing this now. This is the third day of the Creator Lab here at NAB Show. We've had a bunch of questions about authenticity. What is it? Is it important? It's really important. We're going to try and answer the question here of how powerful is authenticity? Why is it important? And what you should think about it, whether you're a brand or a creator or somewhere in between. We have such an amazing group of speakers here. I'm going to introduce each of them real quickly. I won't spend a lot of time on that. Their names are all right here. You can look them up. But I'm going to start off. I'm going to introduce Nicole Giusti, who's head of marketing at ShopMy. Super psyched to have her here. Rene Ritchie, the head of editorial and creator liaison at YouTube. You may have seen him yesterday. And Jerry Wan, who's CEO and founder at World Class Speakers. We are going to jump right into this. We'll talk about 30 minutes. We'll have about 10 minutes for questions. We'll stay right here. And then we'll all break for lunch and we'll come back for some awesome stuff this afternoon. So come on up, guys. Nicole, Jerry, and Rene, give them a big round of applause. So I want to set the stage. How many people think they know what authenticity is? Yeah, right? It's this word that we all use, and it's really hard to define. So, starting with you, Nicole, how do you define authenticity today, and how has it changed over the past few years, if it has?
So I would say here, just in real life, authenticity is being true to yourself. But I think how it's changed is because of the world of social media. You can have a bit of a persona that you have to stay authentic to, and that could be the style of content that people go to you for or those recommendations that they trust you for. And I think it leads to a level of needing to be authentic to who you've created online as well. So Cassandra gave a great example. You can't be vegan and talking about a steakhouse. That doesn't make sense. So I think that's kind of how it's evolved.
What about you, Rene? When you think about authenticity, and you've been creating for a long time in different ways, what do you think it means today, and has it changed since you first started posting and putting stuff online, I don't know, a couple years ago?
Yeah, I think the biggest transition was literally the age of YouTube and social media, because previously there were gatekeepers. And if you wanted to be a celebrity, if you wanted to share your voice, if you wanted to be on radio or in film or in anything, like make albums, you had to be, in essence, a character. You had to be who the producers, the production companies, the studios wanted you to be. But now there's nothing between us and sharing our true selves with the world other than an upload or post or go live button. And that means we can be authentic to ourselves and have a voice.
Jerry, on your side, you work with a number of amazing speakers, and you're also an amazing speaker and connector yourself. How do you think about authenticity, and how do you talk to your clients about honing their authenticity and what they need to do?
Good question. It has to do with, can you sleep at night? Are you proud of you mentioned, having a character on a stage, right? And sometimes we, see creators or see people that we think we know on TV, and then we meet them and you're like, that doesn't match. And so, there's a difference between, I'm sure we'll talk about it. There's a distinct or a nuanced difference between authenticity and transparency, because you can't share everything. But I think are you okay with what other people know about you? And is there an overlap between who you want to be known as or who you want to be and how other people see that? And so, it's a little bit different when you work for somebody else. Obviously, there's some, branding and then sort of brand safe things that need to go on with it. But if you're a creator yourself, are you okay with the person that people think you are? And that is more controllable today in today's environment because of what the content you put out. But, for me, it's, am I proud of the person that I am putting myself out on the internet, or my kids or my parents? And sort of that's how I view authenticity.
As I listen to you guys talk, I think oddly about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and the magic mirror. And so mirror, mirror on the wall, is there one that you as a creator, as a brand, can use to determine whether you're being authentic or not? I mean, it'd be great to be able to have like a chat GPT mirror that said, am I authentic or not? Am I doing it? Is there a mirror? And what do you guys use to think about whether something or someone you work with is authentic or not? Anybody want to take that?
Wife.
Okay. So ask the one who supposedly loves you the most.
Yeah, people who know you outside of the creator realm, right? Is it consistent with who you are every day when the cameras are off? Is it not the best test, but is a good test?
And I think you can judge post to post, video to video, experience to experience, how the audience who comes up with you. There are some people who track comment history across videos and see people who are posting and how they're reacting to them and how they're becoming either more or less attached over time and what that persona is and whether they want to lean more into that or adjust it. Because some people don't want to be who the audience is making them. So it's a good way to sort of see your reflection in the mirror and see if you want to be, to his point, not just who you, but is that the audience that you want?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say something similar around engagement. I think if your audience isn't resonating with what you're talking about, ultimately they're going to be disengaged. They might unfollow you. They might stop commenting. They might stop buying the things that you're recommending. And I think that that can be something that's kind of showing you maybe you're not like being the person that your audience wants you to be or trusts you to be.
I think about authenticity. We use this word a lot. It's kind of this buzzword that's gotten bandied about. I worry and I fear because it's like, oh, you hear it on so many sessions. Now we have a whole session about it. Is it a buzzword that has lost meaning to a lot of people or not? Renee's like this. Talk about it as a buzzword and what you think.
Yeah, I think like there's a performative authenticity that people have gotten used to where someone like fake apology videos, or
So sorry.
I didn't do anything, but I was like just like the ability, like, or like when people will make up entire storylines that didn't exist just to get like sympathy. But I think like there is a difference between authenticity and sincerity, and people can tell when you're sort of performatively being authentic, doing the things that you think they want you to do. It doesn't come off as real. But when someone is, to your point previously, like sharing an appropriate amount of things, like what they're comfortable with, but doing it in a way that you can tell that it's them. Because it's hard to maintain a facade for long periods of time. And being a creator, like if you want any sort of longevity, you're doing this year after year, and it can be really taxing to keep up an image. So the more that you see people being sincere, I think you can tell the difference.
So it's not really a buzzword for you, but it gets used maybe inappropriately from time to time.
It becomes a goal rather than a characteristic.
Yeah. Anybody else on the buzzword aspect of it, Jerry?
You know, it's weird. It's one of those words where if somebody is using it, then you have to question if they're being genuine about it, right? It's like, I'm the most humble person on the stage. Well, no, it's weird, right? And so if you come across authentic, then that's what your audience knows you as. That's what your peers know you as. And that's what people will say when you're not there. On the buzzwordy part, it has become a thing where people are starting to use a lot of it. You know, I give keynotes on the powers of authenticity and things like that. And so it's encouraging people to be themselves and own their own story rather than saying, I am keeping it real, right? Because if somebody's always saying, I'm authentic, then our spidey senses go off a little bit. So I would be wary of people who overuse that word to describe themselves.
And at ShopMy, when you talk about authenticity, does it become a buzzword or is it something that everyone firmly believes in and has been pushes out there?
I think so. You know, with ShopMy, we're connecting brands and creators and helping the creators to make money, helping the brands to make money. So ultimately for us, a lot of it comes down to like, are you converting and the sales of it all? And I think that with what we've found is you can tell when a recommendation of a product is authentic. Like you can tell if it's something I genuinely love, genuinely am excited to tell you about, and that really converts. Versus if you're kind of like lackluster, like you can tell it's a paid partnership you didn't really care about, that does not convert. And so I think for us, authenticity actually is still incredibly important and something that we really encourage like our brands to think about. Don't just work with this creator because they're super trendy and have 1 million followers. Work with them because they genuinely loved your products even before you were willing to pay them.
So I love this because you seem to imply that authenticity can drive profitability. Is that right?
Honestly, yeah. I think that,
It's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. But I think, when we talk about authenticity, people aren't thinking about the conversion of it all. But at ShopMy, we are. And, what I can say with that is you can really just tell when someone genuinely loves a brand versus when they don't. And that reflects in the data and the analytics of it all.
And Rene, you work with lots of creators around the world. Do you think the more authentic you are, the more likely you can build a business?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what's your goal. There's multiple ways to build a business. Like people build thriving businesses off memberships, and that's a connection with your community. People do build incredible brands, and like creator products are huge now. Creators making their own products and selling those directly. But it becomes that thing, that vibe that you have with your community. I ran a tech channel for many, many, many years, and I love to cook, but I only mentioned it in passing. And then if the brand of pans that I used wanted to sponsor me, I said, no way, I'm the tech channel. No one's going to like that. They're like, just just try it. And I did it, and I cooked like a hamburger, and my audience loved it. And they like the conversions were incredible. And I was just because they enjoyed seeing that part of me. And it had nothing to do with like my authority sphere. It had completely to do with the connection that I built with the audience.
And Jerry, do you see this with yourself and the speaking you do and with the people you work with, that the more they're authentic, the more profitable they are, and that's a real goal?
Sure, absolutely. Creators, similar to speakers, they're buying you, right? When they pay you for a brand partnership, yes, they're buying your audience. Yes, when you get hired by a company or a conference to come speak on a stage, they're buying you because it's you. The context of the person matters more than the content of the message, right? And so if we were able, if we all read from the same script on a stage, it would come off differently because it's us and we carry different emotions and different stories. And so I think it's important. And in terms of profitability, yeah, because again, you want somebody to believe that you can drive, that the same speaker can drive the same emotions or the same actions at their conference, at their company, right? And so, seeing somebody with that trust and that, that trust and belief and that partnership is really important.
Can I tag on to that?
100%.
One thing that brought up to me is, like that authenticity. It's important for brands to let creators be authentic because we've all been through this for years. In the very beginning, it was like, dancing monkey, read my message, and that takes all the value out of it. And in traditional media, there were cases where people were like, they loved like a radio host so much, they were literally paying to hear that radio host's voice read their product. But that didn't immediately translate to creators. It was more like, hey, you've got an audience I want, read exactly what I wrote on this paper. And it didn't work because it wasn't the creator and their audience. But now as brands are becoming more educated and understanding the relationship, they're more willing to let like be creative partners. And then the creator can do a much better job because they're not just a monkey reading a message, where we're actually part of it and showing and sharing what we love with our audience.
Well, I think it's a really good thought. I want to get into brands a little bit now and talk about that. Can brands be authentic, and should they be authentic? Nicole?
I think something that we're seeing in a trend that I anticipate will continue is that Gen Z in particular, they want to know who the founder is of the brand, and they want to kind of have that more like personal connection to them than I think like generations in the past. And so I do think that brands have to kind of decide like what do they stand for. And I think those lines become even more blurred as, Rene mentioned like creators who are starting their own brands. Like you started as a public facing person and now you're building a brand. Is the brand the same as you? Trying to kind of find that line. But I do ultimately think that brands need to be thinking through now more than ever, like, who are they? What do they stand for? What do they care about? And do their consumers care about the same thing?
Jerry, walk that line for me for brands. How do they think about authenticity? How should they think about it? And is it possible for them to be too authentic?
I think this is the question of, can authenticity and capitalism coexist, right? And I think we're seeing a lot of it now. We'll keep it high level and saying there's a lot of polarization going on, right? Brands are stepping into causes, stepping into politicians, stepping away, and that signals a message, right? And so one that's been in the news quite a bit is Target and Costco, right? People are either supporting them more or less based on the perceived authenticity of their intentions and where they want to stand. And then subsequent to that, the secondary effect are the brands that once used to sell there or are selling there. And so it's interesting, right? Because at the end of the day, the goal of a brand and a company, and it's completely fine, is to maximize money. And how does authenticity play into that is an evolving question. I would ask, is a brand willing to lose money to stand on their values, which is aligned to their authenticity? Or is the authenticity of a for-profit company simply that? Is it to maximize profits for their shareholders, which that's fine, but like pick one. And so, but I think it's really interesting because we're seeing it live. We're playing it, probably the most, real version of that playing live right in front of us every day.
Right.
Yeah. There's this great quote that said people don't always recognize authenticity, but they can tell when it's missing. And we've seen like some great brands which come off with like super connected, super authentic, like here's to the crazy ones. Just do it. Like they have an incredible resonance, 1,000 songs in your pocket. They find the zeitgeist, they find the message, they make the connection. Sometimes their CEOs are like become like celebrities, or CEOs want to be creators and they're posting as much as the creators that they hire. And then we see them flounder sometimes when they lose that messaging, and sometimes when they have to like maximize shareholder value, or they go in for profits, or they decide to make a change in the business. And then you see this incredible reaction from their community, from their customers, and they have to decide, like, am I going all in on this, or am I going to pivot back to when they actually liked me? And so they're having to think, I think, like the power of social and the power of video is so great that it becomes a stakeholder in any of the decisions.
All right, guys, let's get real and name names. I want to do a lightning round here on brands, and I want to start with brands that do a good job or are doing a good job and a little bit of why that worked. And then think about a brand that maybe didn't. And if you don't want to say their name, that's fine. You can do the category, but naming names is good. Okay, so quickly, what's a brand that's doing a good job and why, Nicole?
Hill House Home. I listened to Nell Diamond, and she was talking all about how with creators, they basically just like send them the product and then say, promote how you will. Whatever platform works for you, however you want to style it, we want to see it come to life. Exactly what Rene was talking about with, brands saying, I love you as a creator. So here's my 35-page creative brief. And if you could read it exactly how I tell you to read it, that'd be great. That's when brands really struggle and we lose the magic. And so I think brands like a Hill House Home that are understanding the power of creators and giving them the flexibility to be who they are online and because they know their consumers best, those are the best brands.
Rene, give me a brand.
Yeah, so as a side effect of my job, I have to love all my partners.
Sorry. All right.
No, but I think like
give me a category of brand.
I'll give you like what I think is the 3 states of brand deals. And I think there are some brands that approach creators as press. And they're like, here's my product. Review it if you want to review it. Don't review it if you don't want to review it. I have no talking points. All I ask is that like you're fair with it. And we see like maybe Apple's like an example of that because Apple like very much engages with creators as press. And then you have other brands, which is just like, I want to do, it's my marketing. I'm going to find creators. I'm going to pay them. They're going to say like pretty much what I want to say, if it's not verbatim, but whatnot. And they want to have that exact relationship with them. And I think both models work, but it's best for the creator when you're clear about which one you are. If you start to mix the two, it becomes hard to understand what you're doing anymore. So they can like figure out the relationship you want to have and then be consistent with the creators in that relationship.
But what about creator as partner in building the business, partner in helping you with your brand and working together, not a journalist, not that kind of marketing, arm, but really your partner in building it. How does that work?
I think that's great. And I think like it goes both ways. Like sometimes brands approach creators. Like we've seen now big brands ask for creators in residence or chief creator officer. Not creative, but chief creator officer. And they're like Marquez Brownlee with Ridge Wallet. It's a great example. But also we see creators who are making products and bringing it, like Feastables, is a big example. Mr. Beast and Feastables, where he's building the entire company and it's very much his company and he's becoming the brand that then is like working with him as a creator. So I think we're going to see those relationships continue to progress on both axes.
Jerry, how about on your side? Name a brand that you think is doing a really good job of being authentic and why.
I think the OG is Ben & Jerry's ice cream, right? We think about how they use their platform. They've obviously gone through some interesting twists and turns with their ownership and the control that they have and they don't. But they're unapologetic about it, right? And so I look to them as, wow, they're willing to lose money. And I think that's a good test of, are you willing to stand on your values?
Ben & Jerry's the good one for me. It's tough when, when you lose the founders or they come in and out. But I was in college in Vermont when they started and we would drink all night on Saturday. And at midnight, we'd go to Ben & Jerry's and have ice cream. And Ben or Jerry were always there giving us scoops. So I love that you still talk about them.
I thought you were going to say they were drinking with you. That would have been a better story.
That never happened to me, but I have no idea.
Is there a Louderback and Berry
No, I know Jerry Garcia for me. That would be great. Let's talk about brand fails. You don't have to name the brand, but just something that you saw a brand do and you're like, oh, that's a little cringy, not authentic. Jerry, go ahead. I'm going to put it on you again.
I'm going to pass the mic for now. Let me think on it.
All right. Brand fail. Anything that you can say. Yeah. Talk about a specific brand, but just, I saw someone do this, or here are 3 things I tell brands not to do.
Yeah. Like don't tell creators not to disclose when there's like a financial relationship because that's not just bad for the creator. It's also bad for the FTC. So make it like run it if you're going to be a professional business, professional company, professional deals, run it professionally.
What about you? What are some things that you can say brands don't do this?
Yeah, so I touched on this before. So my background before ShopMy, I was at an influencer-only agency, and nothing cringed me out more than having to be the one to send the 35-page creative brief that the brand had created. And so I think that's the main thing is just those brands that are so rigid in what they're looking for. Like at that point, if you're looking to shoot a commercial or something like that, hire an actor, hire an actress. Like don't bring in a creator just to completely change who they are as a person. And then similarly, you remember a brand during my time at this agency where we would go through like 5 rounds of edits. And by the time we were done, the creator was like, this wasn't worth whatever the fee was. Like, right. And I do not want to work with you ever again. And now you're not building those long-term relationships with creators that I think can be so impactful to these brands.
You know what? Let's talk about a corollary of authenticity or a related thing, which is trust. So one of the things that I know from my time in media is that trust is very hard to get. And once you lose it, it's almost impossible to get back. And I think authenticity and trust are very much bound together. Talk to me a little bit about trust and how you build trust and how important it is and how you can tie that into authenticity. Jerry, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, trust is, in speaking as it is in creator, and for me, those worlds overlap so much, almost, on top of each other, is that you are a personification or an amplification of the company that's hiring you, right? So even if it is an internal company event, they're putting you on that stage to say, not only do we trust this person's message, but everything about them to represent us. And so without that trust, you're not going to get hired. So, I used to work in corporate America for 15 years. I stepped away. And one of the things that we say is, I no longer have an HR department who's going to ping me and saying, hey, you can't say that. I now have like 30 clients. And so I have to be mindful of how I come across and what I say, what I don't say in the public sphere on LinkedIn and other places, even on a stage like this, because I have to be thinking about, okay, I have to be brand safe to all these people. And not to say that I won't share what's in my heart, but I have to be mindful of that. And that's how I maintain that trust. Because also, as in the creator world, when somebody gives you that mic to speak on a stage or to talk about their product, that comes with that, implied and sometimes contractual trust to not disparage them and to not bring them down. And so it goes both ways, because from our perspective, from the creator and the speaker, you want to continue that relationship. Because I never want to do one gig with a client. You want there to be repeat, referral, and that's how you build a profitable creator business.
Yeah, so Robin Raskin, who's been building Creator Lab with me, it's her business. We work together on this. We were both editors-in-chief of computer magazines really early in our career, which is how we got to know each other. And we were very much about the Chinese wall between ad and edit. Now that wall is shifting a little bit, but it's still really important to show where your biases are and where you are, where a brand might be influencing you. And I love, Rene, that you were talking about disclosure. And disclosure is so important. It's okay to work with a brand, but you need to disclose. How has that developed at YouTube, that disclosure has become such an important thing? And how do you work to get creators to understand that?
Yeah, well, I come from a journalism background like you. Like we had very similar earlier jobs. And I also believe that trust is something that's very hard to earn, very easy to spend. And you can sometimes spend some trust if it's really important, but it's really, really hard to earn it back. So in traditional media, you do have like that firewall. You make the editorial, they sell the ads. They don't know what my editorial is. I don't know what their ads are. I don't have those deals, but creators wear both hats. Creators are often selling their own sponsorships, selling their own ads, and creating their own content. I was never allowed to own stocks in companies that I reported on. Now creators can have equity in companies that they talk about.
By the way, real quick, wasn't it good during the .com crash when we couldn't own stocks? Because everybody else got wiped out. We're like, I just got boring stocks in my
I couldn't buy Apple or Google in 2008. How happy am I?
Yeah. I mean, well, not so good now. So, there's upsides and downsides.
But yeah, so YouTube has there is FTC regulation around disclosures, and YouTube does have built-in system where you can check a box and it'll put up a message telling people that there's a sponsorship in this. It is inequitable right now because Hollywood does not have the same system. Like if in a movie someone's like, I love this Burger King burger, big bite, it doesn't say paid for by Burger King at the bottom of the screen. But on YouTube, if someone is like, I love my Burger King, it'll say sponsored message below, see Burger King. So I think creators have to be cognizant of that. It's not anything they grew up with, but it's really important to learn and to build trust with your audience.
So Nicole, ShopMy you're about shopping, right? Selling product. And you've got creators on it who are helping people to find products that are right for them. How do you think about trust for the creators that you work with and for what you build to make sure that the creators aren't losing trust and they're gaining people actually buying the products that they're pitching?
So I think for us, part of that is changing the way that brands think about creators. And so part of the value that we offer to our brand partners is that you can trust the creators on our platform. So that starts with, we have a vetting process of going through every single person who applies and making sure, like, it's not about follower count for us. Like, that's not what's important, but it is, are you creating really like spammy content? Are you creating overly sexualized content? Then like you might not be a fit for ShopMy. So I think that's kind of the start, is like, for brands, you can partner with creators and you can trust them to create really good content without having to over edit them or having to ask them like a million questions or having a super crazy strict contract. You can just allow them to promote in a way that makes sense for them. And I think that that allows them to maintain the trust with their audience, because they know their audience best and they know how to speak to them and they know what they want to hear about. And so as a brand, the best thing you can do is give them the freedom to speak in their own voice, and then that carries down to the consumer.
Okay, so we have a couple minutes left for the formal part of this session, and then we're going to go to Q&A. I want to do a couple lightning rounds here, and just, quickly, I'm going to ask you guys a question and let me know whether you think this is possible or not, or what you think. Let's start off with, can you teach authenticity? Jerry, can you teach authenticity?
I don't think you can teach authenticity from a, here's what you say and here's what you don't say. I think you can inspire and empower somebody to believe that the true version of themselves that they can live with is the one that should live on the internet. I think many of us have lived our entire lives trying to fit the expectations of other people, our family, our society, our culture included. And so to really step into that and saying, hey, I'm okay with being me and thinking for myself and sharing my thoughts, I think that is the powerful thing. But there's no, here's what you say and don't say. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things you shouldn't do, but there's no, here's how to be authentic.
Renee, can you teach it?
I think you can help people understand context and discover what is their authenticity. Like, sometimes people think like you have to be like, authenticity is you are one way and you're always that one way. But we don't speak to our parents the same way we speak to our friends at the bar. Like, we don't act the same way at work that we might act during like a sports ball game. Like, we have different personas for different situations, and we can find the part of us that thrives in that environment. I think it's less of teaching and more of a self-discovery process.
Nicole?
Sorry, same answer, but I think you can inspire authenticity, but not necessarily teach it.
Yeah. Okay. Is there one telltale for inauthenticity that you're like, oh my God, that person is so not really thinking what they're saying? One telltale that you see that you look at?
Please don't ever do this. Don't pay for promo and claim it as something that somebody wrote about you. You see it a lot on the internet. You pay for an article and you say, wow, Forbes featured me. No, it literally says paid post, but you leave that out of your, I've seen somebody, this is the worst one. Somebody had a press release post, and for PR people, when you pay for a PR press release, it literally publishes on Yahoo Business, right? That's a part of what you pay for. And then they went to LinkedIn and said, oh my God, I was featured on Yahoo. But it's either you're dumb enough to believe it yourself or you think your audience is, and neither of those things are good. And so, but you can't call them out in public either, right? And so don't do that.
Telltale, Nicole?
I think when you're pushing products that we know you don't actually care about or like, I remember, this still stands out to me because the amount of money paid for this partnership was out of this world. They spelled the brand's name wrong in the content. And then we're like, this is my favorite product ever. And that's a great example of that was not authentic.
Telltale for you, Renee.
Oh, there are so many. Like the short where it's clear that they cut and pasted between Joe Rogan and them just saying whatever they were saying in their basement. Or the person who like is famous for one takes, having 1,000 takes using a product you can tell they've never used before in the sponsor segment of their video. Or just the hello fellow kids cringe using language that just doesn't feel like it has any purpose coming out of their mouths.
So there's a lot of work creators do. Creators are burning out. It's a tough job. You're all in, and sometimes you're just so exhausted that you may slip into not being authentic. So some of the things we talked about may just be because, oh God, I'm so tired. I've been creating, I've been live for hours. You have one tip for creators to kind of what should they do to keep themselves who they are, even though they're just, so over their 12th hour of creating in a day? Jerry?
I think it's okay to take a break. I mean, there's a lot of crap going on in the world, right? Like, we have to create content and make money, but I think it's okay to just admit and just say like, hey, like for me personally, I haven't sent an email newsletter out to my list in about 2 months because there's a lot and I don't want to fake it. I started doing a series at the beginning of the year. I live in LA. The fires happened and I was like, what the hell am I doing? right? Like talking about nothing at the end of the day when I have friends who've lost their homes. And I think it's okay to admit the realities because that's what everybody is experiencing. The market's not doing very well. Everybody is personally or societally impacted. And then to saying like, look, buy this thing could come off as extremely offensive and you lose that trust. The people might not have that money to spend on, fun things or luxury things.
How about you, Rene? What do you say to creators? I'm sure they come to you and they're like, oh my God, what do I do, Rene?
Well, infamously, I used to do hours and hours and hours of live podcasting almost every day sometimes. And my thing is just be true. The easiest thing to remember is the truth. And the reason those formats work is because after streaming for 3 hours, 4 hours, podcast 3 hours or 4, you have nothing left. There's no talking points. There's no marketing class. There's nothing that you can remember in your head except for how you truly think. So if you start off with that, there's no perceivable shift. If you just be yourself from the beginning of the thing to the end, you will survive that experience. They're designed to get you out of being a talking monkey. So if you don't start off there, you'll do much better.
And then Nicole, what do you think?
I think there can be an overemphasis on follower count. And so then people are just constantly chasing, are my followers going up? Are my followers going up? If I do more content, will my followers go up? If I try something new, will my followers go up? And I think some of the strongest creators on our platform have less than 20,000 followers, but they have such a loyal audience who listens to everything that they say. They tune in for every video. They buy every product. And so I think don't lose sight of who were your initial fans, and they probably came there for whatever you were creating that was probably authentic or genuine to you. So don't feel like you have to keep branching out to just chase this next wave or this bigger audience.
So great group of folks up here. You've been listening for 30 minutes. I want to let you guys get involved in the discussion and ask them a couple of questions over the next few minutes. So go ahead.
Hey, great platform. Love you guys. And love that you're not using quantitative bias in followers and stuff like that. I think it's awesome that, brands need to focus more on qualitative aspects of it. And so one of the things is around authenticity is how much of a cornerstone do you think vulnerability and empathy anchor authenticity in any personal brand that, corporate brands are trying to align with?
Good one. Who wants to take that on? Vulnerability?
I mean, if you are empathetic and vulnerable, please be that way. If you're not and you're faking it, it is so wicked obvious because it comes off like a robot whose emotion chip hasn't properly been seated in the processing unit. So yeah, I think it's an important quality. Don't be afraid of it if that is who you are, but do not fake authenticity if you can't do it convincingly.
I agree. One of the most popular or sort of cringy things we see sometimes is when somebody didn't start from the bottom, but they want people to because that struggle is what people think sells. And you're like, yo, you had rich parents. It's okay to admit that, but don't be like, I came from nothing. And if I can do it, so can you. And that phrase means so much for different people depending on your circumstance. And so, like Rene said, if it's part of your story, sure, share it, but don't make stuff up.
Yeah. And I think for me, part of why I talked about who you are just in a room with your closest friends might be different than who you are online. There are some people who they just make hilarious content and that's what they're great at. So if they suddenly came on and they're crying or doing all these things that feel totally different than the content they're typically producing, it's not going to resonate. It's going to feel a little off. So I think really staying true to who you are as a creator.
Cool. We have a question right here.
So creators are starting to use AI to help them create their content to the extent that I've even seen some talking about using digital doubles in order to create more content to put out there. That obviously complicates the idea of authenticity. Have you seen any issues come up with creators using AI and that being a blemish on their authenticity? How do you see that complicating the process?
That's great. Is AI the enemy of authenticity? Who wants to take that on?
One of the things that I think is important to the discussion of AI is that the tools being used to do these things are new and they're often faster and scale better, but the actual thing itself isn't new. So there have been VTubers long before there was AI, people who just had animated or CGI. CGI has been changing reality long before AI did. And there were people who had characters that they played, especially on radio where you couldn't see them. They would have entirely different fictional personalities. So I think the desire for some people is not to share themselves. And there's newer and better tools that makes that scalable to more people, but you still have to have a core message or a core persona that people are attaching to.
I think interesting. I have friends who have created like bots of themselves to give advice, and obviously that's trained in theory on everything they've created. Therefore, it is a reflection of that. I think we saw it. I'm going to go to San Francisco tomorrow. SHRM has an AI plus HI project, which is human intelligence, and one of the speakers on the webpage is Read AI, not Reid Hoffman, but Read AI. And so, what does that mean? I think the first time Read AI spoke on a stage, Read AI said a bunch of stuff that real Read would not have, particularly about his peers. And so that contextual filter is not there with AI. And so if you ask it things enough or in different ways, you can get it to say something. And what is the culpability of the human that it is trained on? Who knows? But, I don't know. Authenticity and AI to me don't mix yet. I don't know if it ever will.
All right, watch me regret this take in like 6 months. But as of right now on ShopMy, we really haven't seen a lot of like creators using AI just to like kind of recreate themselves. I think something Sandra talked about the panel earlier that I really liked is creators using AI to make themselves more efficient. So maybe that's helping with scripting or caption writing or coming up with ideas, but it's not necessarily like the person in front of the camera. So at least as of right now, what I have seen is like creators are still the ones that have that like human to human connection, and that has still been important to their followers. But they're using AI to maybe like free themselves up so they as a person can create more content, but it's not necessarily just AI making the content for them.
Does anybody in the audience have an authenticity story where they may have learned something or did something that they regret that they want to share? Anybody have an authenticity story they want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this isn't necessarily me, but it's another creator
Friend of a friend
I'm friends with, and they come off as inauthentic a lot. And this blaring example was they have this partnership with a local boba shop where every so often they're in there posting, "Oh my God, love the boba, so great." So on their Instagram story, they had, "Guys, you gotta go to Bobarita, love it, so good." They're holding boba. 2 story frames later, they had a shot of them with chicken. They're like, "Toss the boba. I'm on that all protein. Like, I can't be drinking that sugar right now." And I'm like, how are you posting this 2 frames later after like promoting this boba shop to say, "Oh, I threw it in the trash because I'm not drinking sugar"? I was like, what? It blew my mind to see that, because don't do that.
By the way, hi Denise. I didn't even know you were here. So cool. Anybody else have a story they want to share? I know you got a question. I'll come to you in a minute. Anybody else have a story? We're going to come to your question then.
Thank you all. A few topics ago, you were discussing the line between a founder putting themselves forward facing versus having your brand have their own voice. As a entrepreneur and a solopreneur, there's obviously a cohesion between my brand and myself, but it may not be exactly the same. So what advice can you give for teetering that line?
So do you already have like a social presence? Are you a content creator yourself and creating a brand, or is it kind of brand first?
So it would be brand first. I haven't posted anything yet. I haven't officially launched yet, but I created all my socials, have the names and everything. So I'm just wondering how much forward facing should I be versus letting the brand speak for itself?
So like I said, I think people are craving kind of knowing who is behind the brand. I think especially for like these smaller brands, and it's exciting and interesting and to like see you create something. And I think there's a lot of people who like to see that. What I would encourage you to do is to take a moment before the brand launches and you're really putting yourself out there more and think like, what is my line? Like, what do I not want to share about my personal life? Or like, what are some areas that like I don't feel comfortable talking about? Like, if I start talking about, maybe I'm making this up. If you're super political, like maybe that's not something that's part of your brand. Go into the experience kind of knowing where your line is both on your personal side and your brand side. So that way you don't end up like overstepping one way or another and jeopardizing either your personal brand or the brand itself.
I think it depends. Is it a product or a service? It's a product.
Oh, wellness products and experiences.
So they're buying trust and they're buying you at some point, right? Because they have to trust you before they buy the thing because they don't know the thing. But then on the flip side, if you want to exit, then you have to plan for a world for that product to exist without, if you choose to never want to do something or contractually you can't. And so I think, to our point, it's figuring out how much do you want in the long run and then plan backwards from it. There's plenty of success stories both ways, right? But ultimately, when people don't know the product or the thing, it's purely based on your trust and your likability that they're going to give the product a try.
Yeah. I would just say, do you want to be public or do you want to be personal? If you don't want to be public, because being public is not great sometimes, then you can use the brand as a protection, like a screen between you and that. And then if you do want to be public, do you want to do one thing and use your your personality to drive the entire thing? Or do you want to have an array of different things? Because that might be confusing. So then you might want to have, it can even be your name brand, thing, your name thing. Do you want to be a Kardashian, Kardashian or Kardashian? I never remember which one is which. Do you want to be that or do you want to be someone who has the big paper company, the big makeup company, the big, electronics company? So just think about the future and how you're going to scale out.
By the way, that was one of the most authentic things I've seen all day is him I don't know, Kardashian. That's so Rene. It's awesome.
I watched a lot of Instagram and a lot of Star Trek. What am I going to do?
We have time for maybe one or two more questions. I'm going to start here and see how we go.
So I want to kind of change the perspective because I'm seeing so many news outlets and broadcasting losing their authenticity and becoming the narrative of an influencer. So not big names or networks trying to, showcase news if they were influencers. So see your perspective on how it's shifting way.
So you're talking about journalism or are you talking about?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of media outlets. A lot of journalists think they have to build a personal brand now because they don't know where they're going to be working next year or next month. And so they want to build their own brand, not necessarily the company's brand. Some companies are okay with that. Some companies are not okay with that. But at the same time, we're seeing there's a creator, Ludwig. He has one of the biggest streamers in the world, has a secondary channel called Mogul Mail. And he's got a journalism degree. And he goes in and goes, I don't know what reporters are doing. This is how journalism works. And he'll go down and break down a story better than I've seen it reported in mainstream media, just because he has creator money. He doesn't care. He's not beholden to anybody. He just wants to express how this thing works. So I think we're seeing both influencers become the next generation of journalists, of reporters, of magazines. Cleo Abram, Johnny Harris, they're doing video journalism better than a lot of mainstream outlets. And I think the mainstream outlets are trying to compete with people who have parasocial relationships. So they're trying to build their own brands.
I think this might be an extremely interesting hot take, but I think certain media outlets and certain media people today are what we talked about, really strict, full-time, ironclad, contractually bound brand deal people. They are paid to say specific things and to avoid saying specific things without their authenticity coming through. And it's done through this lens of media, and I'm staying impartial. But, and it's on both sides and all sides, right? People don't cover stories or cover it in a certain way because that's who they pay, that's who pays them, right? And so, will we ever have real journalism? I don't know. Because at some point, even the YouTube folks, money gets involved in it and it can change. But yeah, I think you're seeing the influence of money and power and, everybody wants a book deal. Everybody wants, their own brand after. So every news person has their own, you see them on TV and then you see them on Instagram, and sometimes they're not the same person.
Anything to add to that, Nicole? You're not really in the journalism space, but I'm sure you have an opinion if you want to share.
No,
okay.
I'll leave it to the experts.
We have time for one more question if anybody has one. Otherwise, we can break for lunch. Oh, wait, I do have one. Yay. Now I got to run way over there.
You're going to ask what's for lunch, Jim?
What? I don't know. We'll see. I haven't gotten there yet.
I don't have a question necessarily, but in addition to what you were asking earlier about the authenticity and building the brand and the company, I run a female-led production company, and I have a physical studio in my town in Boise, Idaho. Somehow, a lot of people think a man owns my company, and they don't. It's me. And so think about that as you start promoting yourself as the entrepreneur, as the brand. How do you, people do need to know who you are. And so I've been working really hard to share, no, it is a female who owns this female company.
Good stuff, and probably a good thing to break on. Anything to add? Final words up there?
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. I really want to thank Nicole, Rene, Jerry. Please give them a big round of applause.
Thank you, Jim.